Hello and welcome to the Deep to NBA podcast. My name's Sean and joining me as always is the one and only Dante Boffman. Mr. Boffman, man, how are we?
I'm good, Sean. I'm recently off like a revelatory food experience this afternoon.
Oh yeah? What was it? Was it the dumplings you cooked in your microwave?
No, I didn't cook those. I cooked in the pan, Sean. Pan-fried dumplings. No, my revelatory experience has been, you're going to laugh because it's pretty simple, but it's been peanut butter on toast. Wow.
Full stop at the end of that.
Who knew it was that good?
Like crunchy or smooth?
Smooth at the moment.
At my house, we've got smunchy. Have you ever had smunchy toast? Smunchy peanut butter?
No, because I think I probably only once before in my life had peanut butter on toast because I've always been like, oh, not really. And then I had a bad experience with it and I was like, never again. Use it all the time in cooking because I love like a peanutty satay kind of flavor. And then the other day, and also this afternoon, I was like, you know what? Might just fuck around and have some peanut butter on toast. And I'm literally walking around the house, eating it, talking to my housemates, being like, did you know this was so good? Like, I've been walking around for 23 years and people haven't told me how good peanut butter on toast is.
I feel like it's out there. People have definitely known in the past.
Well, no one filled me. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to make up for lost time. So I just powered down 4 pieces of peanut butter toast and this like beautiful crusty loaf. So wonderful.
Well, I as we were saying off air, I had a short day at work today, so I decided to spend second half of the day playing NBA 2K, and I started a Sacramento Kings minor league. And as I was doing it, I was like, all right, let's get started. And then I did something, and I was like, well, I'm going to tell Dante just to hear his thoughts because like it's kind of realistic and it's kind of interesting. So obviously, I'm at like 2023 right now, and it's surprisingly not going too well. But you started
this afternoon and you're already 2 years in the future.
Yeah, shock and awe. I'm not playing that many Kings games. I actually had one game with Buddy Hield just before. He hit 11 threes in the first half and then missed 20 in the second half. Because as soon as I hit 11, I was just like, all right, I'm going for some kind of record here. And then missed every single. I took the worst shots in the world. And then after I'd missed like 5 bad shots, then he got cold. And then as soon as he got wide open shots, then he was just missing him. And then as soon as he kept missing him, then the floppy players were getting run for Halliburton. And I'm like, I don't care. But anyway, the first order of business I did when I took over from Monty McNair as the general manager of the Kings was, all right, let's get rid of Marvin Bagley.
Did you drink from the fountain?
I drank from the fountain, I spat in his face and took his job. And I wanted just to move off Marvin Bagley. And at the moment in 2K, you can only get injury-free rosters. You have to like manually enter in the injuries. So I go in at the start of every one of these minor leagues, chuck in Klay Thompson for 100 days, chuck in Kawhi Leonard for 200 days, just do the big ones. But obviously Dario Saric isn't a big one with his torn ACL. So what I did is I traded Marvin Bagley for Dario Saric and Phoenix's 2022 second round pick, with the reason being, okay, Phoenix get a shot at a backup center who has the upside of being a backup center. And your dude's injured anyway. So what are you going to do? It's just matching salary. And if JaVale McGee isn't the answer, then A, stop asking that question. And B, you've got another look. What do you think about that fake little trade?
Yeah, I mean, it's gross, but I'll do it.
What do you mean? Yeah, you'd do it, yeah.
But I think just like I'd do it because Saric is going to miss this entire season and then he's going to be expiring, like a $9 million expiring. So I would do it just purely because, maybe Bagley would be good. But I think if, I've got the voice of friend of the pod or less on my shoulder, when you're saying like, he's got the upside to be a backup center, like Les will just say, no, he doesn't. And yeah, I just feel like Bagley's like not good whatsoever. So, but better than having a roster spot for Saric to sit out for a year and then take half a season to kind of come back to form. We don't need Saric. We've already got Frank Kaminsky
and JaVale McGee. And I don't know, is DeAndre Ayton starting?
What about Sticks if Jalen Smith decides to do anything?
You know what? I hadn't thought of him in about 4 weeks.
Yeah, we picked him. We picked him 1 spot ahead of Devin Vassell and 2 spots ahead of Tyrese Halliburton. You probably didn't, but I did.
That would have been
acutely aware of that. So I was when the draft happened, I was in the car like listening to the picks, and they were like Jalen Smith, and I was like, who the fuck is Jalen Smith? Like, I remember where I was. I was at the fucking roundabout on Mounts Bay Road in Perth. And I was like, who the fuck is this bloke? Jalen Smith. I think you said Tyrese Halliburton wrong.
Yeah, it's like, where were you when 9/11 happened? Where were you when like Dom Shee kicked the goals? Like, where were you when the Kings draft? Sorry, the Suns drafted Jalen Smith. Was it 10th or 9th?
It was 10th, yeah.
Oh, what can you do, man? What can you do?
See, the problem is that like James Jones is literally, Sarah, I remembered his name this week. James Jones is literally beyond reproach because every terrible move that he's made has just turned out to actually be a great move. So I'm just waiting for Sticks to come out and, play like 20 minutes a game as our backup 4 and just like average 10 and 8 and play a role.
Well, silver lining with the Tyrese Halliburton thing is that if you did draft Halliburton, you wouldn't have Cameron Payne right now because he wouldn't have had the opportunity to bloom. How about that?
Yeah, I like that positive slant. That's a good way of looking at it.
Your face doesn't like the positive slant.
Yeah.
Your face is like, nah, man. Halliburton behind Chris Paul.
Well, like, call me greedy, but like, could we have had both of them?
Well, I mean, I've said on this podcast a handful of times that if you just had a somewhat average backup center, you might have even won the championship. So that's for Jalen Smith bashing. But yeah.
That's some Frank Kaminsky bashing.
No, I never held out hope for Frank Kaminsky. Just like Marvin Bagley getting traded for a second-round pick and salary.
Salary dumped. Okay. All right. Should we hit the meat of the pod, as we like to say?
The meat of the pod, and this is the second half of the off-season grades pod. So obviously, if you listened last week, you know exactly what we're doing. And if you don't know what we're doing, probably listen to the first half because we are doing the off-season grades, and it's a part 2. Why would you watch part 1 before part 2? Except I actually watched. I was watching this series of movies the other day, and I started on part 4 just because I thought it'd spice it up a bit. That's you know what? I actually thought that was going to be funny. It's just Star Wars. It's the fucking shittest joke. So we'll start off with the Houston Rockets, who drafted Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun, Usman Garuba, and Josh Christopher. They re-signed David Nwaba, 3 for 15, and Armoni Brooks, not to be confused with Armoni Bates. And they signed Daniel Tice to the full mid-level at 4 for $35 million. Traded for no one, and they lost Kelly Olynyk and lost Sterling Brown. So I've given them a C. Because I'm sitting here saying, okay, you had the second pick, you drafted the right guy. I mean, some people are saying maybe you should have gone 1, but like, look, we're not going to find out until we actually play the games. But they took the right guy. They took 2 very, very interesting players in my eyes, with the 16th and 23rd picks being Sengun and Garuba. There was quite a few good vibes around Josh Christopher, but again, like, these were rookies, who knows? And then what am I saying? Saying I love Sengun. That's not really going into my grade. I really like the Daniel Tice deal. I think it is extremely tradable, and halfway through the year, some team's going to be like, shit, we don't have a center. Some team called Charlotte, and they're going to come calling and say, hey, like, you obviously don't need this dude. You just want to come in and take him. Can we take him off your hands? David Nwaba, 3 for 15. If it hits, you've got a good 3-and-D role player who can get traded or just play on your team because he's still young. I just like they've got tradable dudes. They drafted the right players. They didn't fuck around. And this is the start of a slow rebuild.
So, well, you're going C.
It's just average.
Interesting. I'm on B+.
Okay.
Because I really like it. Because I think you're right in saying that Sengun and Garuba have like a lot of interesting potential. And Jalen Green appears, like you said, like you can't really count the rookie chickens until they've hatched. But Jalen Green appears to be going to be a good player. Although there is like some Colin Sexton potential about him, just quietly. For me, saying that, obviously that's a compliment. But for other people, like, mate, if you told like the average Joe Blow in the NBA, like Jalen Green's going to be Colin Sexton, you might get some interesting reactions. I also like the Tice signing, although I'm just like nervous about giving a center the mid-level. Giving the center the full mid-level, not because of like the dollar value, because I think Tice is definitely worth like, what is it, like $8.5 million a year. Just because there's some voodoo shit going on in the last like 2-3 years with giving a center the full mid-level on a multi-year deal. And I can just like, I'm getting like shivers down my spine thinking about it.
Mm.
This not being a tradable contract, and you've got the years in. Like, what if Tice is suddenly shit? Because is he better than like what we thought Derek Favors was like a year ago, or like what we thought Tristan Thompson was a year ago when they signed their deals? Probably not appreciably better. So they've given him the money and they've given him the years. I just kind of feel like we've just seen Utah and Boston have to dump their centers. So when you say tradable, it might be tradable, but not to an advantageous situation. But I do think he's a good player, and I probably would rather pay him 436 rather than Kelly Olynyk the same amount of money over 3 years. So I think that's a good like piece of business comparatively, and theoretically Tice can be the same sort of offensive spacer, although he obviously is not the shooter, or dare I say postseason performer that Kelly Olynyk is. Although I doubt that the Rockets are going to miss Kelly Olynyk's postseason performance, because you have to be in the postseason to miss it. But I think B plus.
Why have you given a B plus? Everything you've just said to me is, oh, I don't like the years, the money's fine, bit of a risk.
No, Jalen Green looks good. Jalen Green looks like he's going to be an all-star. Şengün and Garuba look like they're going to be at worst like extremely interesting role players. Tice is still a good player, and then comparatively, like if the move was like just retaining Kelly Olynyk and not, paying Kelly Olynyk and not bringing Tice in, like I'd rather bring Tice in.
See, I've given them a C though, because I'm just like, okay, good. You've done the average. Like, drafting Jalen Green is sick. You've got a really good player, but you've got the second pick. So with
this was a team that was, like moribund and had nowhere to go. Was left completely in tatters after the superstar departures of the last few years. Harden, West, Paul, all kind of like leaving in acrimonious circumstances, and their best they picked up from the obviously be like the best team we've ever seen in the history of basketball. And Victor Oladipo was on this team last year. Like that's a sad place to be. And all of a sudden, through some shrewd drafting, they've kind of like turned it around. So I think that there's a lot of optimism. And whilst they didn't make any like splash moves that are like, oh my God, like that was wow. They signed like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to a 2-year, $10 million deal. Wow, like A+. Like they didn't do anything that's like, that's crazy. They're just in a much better place going forward, like big picture, and also for this season. Like this team is going to be like
I know you mean
fun.
Yeah,
and before they were a complete fucking tire fire. So
it's like, do you like Kenyon Martin?
That's where the B plus comes in, just from like what it was to like what it looks like now.
So I think it's just going to be a difference in our grading system then, because I've given these teams with high picks just a pass just for drafting the right guy. I'm not saying like, hey, awesome, if you've just like replenished this young talent. I'm saying you had these picks and you use them correctly. Like maybe if they trade up and they get a better guy, that's part of the offseason, but I'm not rewarding it for winning the lottery.
Well, I mean, that's just a philosophical difference then between you and I.
Well, speaking of this exact philosophical difference, let's move on to the Pistons, who drafted Cade Cunningham first and Isaiah Livers 42nd. They re-signed Hamidou Diallo at 2 for roughly 10, Corey Joseph 2 for 10, Rodney McGruder on the minimum, and Saban Lee at 3 for 5.1, which is gorgeous. They signed Frank Jackson at 2 for 6, Trey Lyles 2 for 5.1, and the aforementioned Kelly Olynyk at 3 for 37. They ended up taking on DeAndre Jordan and then waiving him in a trade with the Brooklyn Nets, sending out Sekou Demboya, Jahlil Okafor, and they also sent Mason Plumlee to Charlotte, and they also lost Dennis Smith Jr. and Wayne Ellington. That was my best Boris Johnson impression right there, but I just trying to find the word. So I've given them a C for the same reason as before. They've got a pass grade. I actually really like the Kelly Olynyk deal, and I like Kelly Olynyk on a rebuilding team like this, where you say, hey, you've got this dude in Cade Cunningham, he's best with the ball. Let's surround him with guys that can shoot, guys that can score, guys that are going to finish off what Cade Cunningham's going to pass to them. I'm happy with every deal they signed, except for the Trey Lyles deal, because last year they did this with Mason Plumlee, and they're like, oh, we got Mason Plumlee. He's a trade candidate. Awesome. You got a second-round pick from Charlotte a year later. That looks meh. I think Trey Lyles is considerably worse than Mason Plumlee. And why the fuck have you just, even though it's only $2.5 million a year, why have you just given him that? Like, he has no role on this team, let alone the NBA. And here he is. What did you give him?
I gave him a C plus. Because I think bringing Cade in obviously is a big boon for the franchise. I kind of like Hamidou Diallo. Like I don't know why, but he just kind of has like some game wrecking, like athletic potential.
The years on that deal's good. In case he goes off next year, you've got him for one more year.
You've still got him, yeah. And then Olynyk is a good player to have. I think it's probably a bit of an overpay. It's a bit of a rich deal to bring him in, but you're right in saying that, like, let's just, get a big shooter around. And then, yeah, like Jackson and Lyles is not really much to write home about. I think maybe the answer to the question of why they're giving Trey Lyles guaranteed money is because they don't want to be good. And if it's between bringing in like a role player who might add like an extra 1.5 wins of value and Trey Lyles, you just bring Trey Lyles in. And also because in theory, Trey Lyles fits the exact same thing that we just said about Olynyk, someone who's big and can shoot. I mean, obviously, if that was true, Trey Lyles wouldn't be signing for $2.5 million a year. So again, like philosophical differences, but I think it's fine. You bring in Cade. Everyone knew that was going to happen. We'll see if he's the revolutionary, context changing pick that everyone thinks he's going to be. And if he is, dare I say, through the first 10 games, if he's playing out of his mind, a lot of these players' deals might look like heaps better. Like minor potential for like the Cade Cunningham to Hamidou Diallo alley-oop to be the bleacher. This year's Lonzo to Miles Bridges. I mean, the Melo to Miles Bridges Bleacher Report.
They tell me that Bleacher Report's not going to retweet like just a Kelly Olynyk layup after a Cade Cunningham pass.
Well, I mean, like they're literally already on the rim for Cade, so they probably would.
Exactly. Look, I'm happy with you giving him a C plus. I think Kelly Olynyk is a great signing, but the one thing I would wonder is that obviously Troy Weaver wasn't around when they drafted Sekou Doumbouya. Obviously, I'm higher on Sekou Doumbouya than maybe over half the league, but they've pretty much given Sekou to Brooklyn, who might waive him or might trade him in another deal, depending on what they want to do with that $5 million. And in return, gotten 4 real second round picks. I think 2 of them have the potential to be like a high second round pick, which is like Washington Post, Bradley, and Brooklyn's 2026 or something like that. So would you have rather kept Sekou and what you're going to be tanking anyway? You're going to be a bad team. Maybe you've got something in Sekou. Would you rather have kept him or just gotten these 4 second round picks that look okay, but still it's just a second round pick?
I think in a vacuum I'd keep him, but they obviously just think he can't play if they're moving him on. He's one of those guys who has like some second draft potential, which is obviously what's happened with him moving to Brooklyn. But I mean, they've had a close look at him, and I think if they're moving on, like they well and truly have decided that this dude doesn't have what it takes. So in that case, cash in. Cash in. And
like the backside here, it's like, okay, what if Brooklyn move him on again and like trade into like the Thunder, and then he goes to the Thunder and averages like 10 and 8, and he's like everyone's next Jordan McLaughlin, and you're like, oh, look at this dude. It's like you're not really getting burned. Everyone's just
his absolute best case scenario is like decent role player. So it's like, well, 4 first round picks, 4 extra bites at the decent role player apple. So I think that's the right call, especially given that they have had time to like look at him in depth and say like, can this dude play or not?
All right. Do you want to give us the particulars for the Oklahoma City Thunder?
So they drafted our boy, Australian 6'8" point guard.
Out of St. Kevin's.
Skevs, bloody hell. Josh Giddey. They took him 6th, the Thunder. They also took Trey Mann 18th and Jeremiah Robinson Earl as a second round pick. They re-upped Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the full max bag, 5 years, $172 million. They brought back Mike Muscala. They also traded for Derek Favors from the Jazz, and they got a first round pick. I got a first round pick for their troubles. They do like first round picks. in Oklahoma City. And then they lost is like a pretty generous term, Tony Bradley and Svi Mikhailuk via free agency. And then everyone's favorite big man who only actually had 2 good games, Moses Brown and Al Horford via trade. So I can see that what you've put in there. I'm going to go slightly higher than you, and I'm going to go C plus. I can see that you've put in a C. I think that the only thing that's making me say that, yeah, this is good, is the fact that they're bringing back SGA on the bag, and the reach for, like, if you think it is a reach, the reach for Giddey looks maybe worse than it is, because the only reason they're picking 6 is because they've had terrible draft luck, which I don't like, lottery luck, which I don't think can be held against them.
Yeah.
And I think Giddey at 6 is just as good of a pick as, Kuminga at 7 or any of the guys that came after, because there's obviously just such a talent drop off after the first 5 picks. So it's like, well, you may as well just pick whoever you like the best out of the next 5 guys. So I think for those reasons, like, good that you've extended SGA, and that they can't, the lottery luck can't be held against them. I've gone C plus. What say you?
Yeah, so I've just given them a straight C, and like with all their draft picks, like I've read all the articles from the Thunder dudes, and I've listened to all the podcasts, and like I get the reasoning behind it. And it's that Sam Presti's trying to build like this new age, like that old Golden State Warriors team, which is like everyone's 6'8" and like 7 foot and in between. Everyone can defend, everyone can pass. People might not have the most talent at putting the ball in the basket, but everyone can pass and get the ball to like the good guys. And it's like, this is a Sean Livingston type pick. And for exactly what you said, there's a drop off after 4 or 5. And then as soon as you've dropped after that, and like by all accounts, they tried to move up. So I'm not docking them here to say like, oh, why didn't they try and move up? Why don't they try to bundle some of these picks? Because you saw that they even offered Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and 6 for number 1 for Cade Cunningham and OKC. So like, you imagine if they're offering Shai, they would probably want to offer their first round picks first, that they, those millions that they have bundled. So it's like they tried everything to move up, and the Josh Giddey thing is just like, okay, a guy he's a glue guy, he's going to fit in every single team you do. His best case scenario, he'll fit in every single team that you do, which is like fair enough. I just don't like it that much. And same with Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. It's like, I did a little bit of scouting for him for the Denver Nuggets for nuglove.com. And it's like, awesome. You're a power forward with a little bit of skill, but you defended in Villanova. Can you defend in the NBA? This like he sort of reeks a lot like Trey Lyles. And I don't know if you're listening. I don't know if you were listening 5 minutes ago, but I'm not the biggest fan of Trey Lyles. In fact, I docked the Pistons half a grade for just simply signing him to a minimum deal. And Trey Mann, I don't mind Trey Mann. He was also in this same range as Denver, so he was around the 26 area. Some people had him as low as the second round. And Sam Vecini of The Athletic said this was the second worst draft pick in the first round this year, the first being Josh Primo to the San Antonio Spurs. I think Trey Mann looks all right, but I mean, Sam Vecini's watched more Trey Mann than me, but I think he looks fine. He just happens to be very small and can't defend. Let's say like they did their job at drafting players that are young and have upside. I just don't like any of their upside, but that's my own personal bias. Everything else is fine. Just keep getting those picks in. We should probably factor in the fact that they also got Kemba Walker and were able to flip Kemba Walker by only absorbing $22 million of his salary, which isn't currently out. And they also got picks for Derek Favors. I picked for Derek Favors. So just to see, like, this is just classic Sam Presti offseason. Yeah,
it is a classic Sam Presti offseason. I'm going to be Josh Giddey's biggest number 1 super fan. Like, I'm on the...
I'm off it. As soon as I heard he was from St. Kevin's, I jumped right off. I was actually like, yeah, go on. The NBL is a great development place, but I'm off it. I'm not on it at all. Unless he turns into Sean Livingston.
You got something that you want to say about Skev's boys?
I think they say enough themselves.
I, along with a few of my friends, we have three golden rules. And the third rule is actually, this is not, I'm not making this up. This is actually true. The third golden rule is never trust a Skev's boy unless his name is Remy.
Because your mate Remy.
Because of my great mate Remy, who is a Skev's boy and is among the most trustworthy people I've ever met in my entire life. So I can say this, because I have a nuanced and developed position. Josh Giddey, I don't trust you, but I'm going to support you from a distance.
What are your other two rules?
The other two rules, the first one is there's no friends in the seeding game. And the second one is last one to touch it puts it in the bin.
Awesome. Should we move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Some words to live by.
We were over the moon when we first heard that the NBA was going to be televised on Australian free-to-air TV in the 2019-20 season. It didn't exactly go swimmingly with the nasty cough halting the season and games getting cancelled left, right and centre, but it was a huge step and an exciting one for basketball fans all across the country.
Better yet, it wasn't a commercial channel cashing in on some basketball nerds like us. It was SBS, one of our public broadcasters. Unfortunately, the NBA wasn't the only thing SBS was pushing last season. They also ran advertisements from Sportsbet, Ladbrokes, Bet365, BetEasy, and Neds, some of the biggest sports betting companies in Australia.
In a one step forwards, two steps backwards move, SBS has dropped the ball here. As a public broadcaster, SBS plays a key role in providing relevant, culturally appropriate health information to local communities. The last thing SBS should be doing is offering a platform for gambling companies during the most financially unstable time in recent memory.
This past year, men aged 18 to 24 made up 79% of new gambling account holders, with increased median spending and frequency of bets. This is the last thing we should be spending our money on given the financial uncertainty that comes with the pandemic. During COVID lockdowns, wagering companies spent more money on advertising and incentives to gamble, and it worked. SBS needs to hear from viewers that gambling ad revenue isn't worth the harm it causes. Call on the SBS chair, George Savitas, to put community health ahead of gambling revenue by signing the petition at www.endgamblingAds.org.au/get-gambling-off-SBS with hyphens in between.
The Cleveland Cavaliers drafted Evan Mobley. Last one touching puts him in the bin. They re-signed Jarrett Allen at 5 for 100. They signed Larry Markin at 4 for 67.5. There's some light guarantees on the final year. They traded for Ricky Rubio, which hasn't been a positive trend for the past couple of teams to do that. They did you write Dat Melly? They lost Matthew Dellavedova, who went to Melbourne, who wants to come back to the NBA, but is just going to a minor league before he does that. They lost Isaiah Hartenstein, who I adore and is still an unrestricted free agent. Charlotte, please sign him. And they lost Larry Nance Jr. and Taurean Prince. I've given them a C-, and I should probably go lower, to be honest, now that I think about it. But I like Evan Mobley. I love Rick Rubio as a mentor to Darius Garland. I really like Darius Garland for some reason. This past year has just made me love him. I don't know if you're on mute or whether you're fake laughing, but I really like the Rick Rubio mentorship. You know what? I'm actually going to take this down to a D+, same as you. Actually, I'm going to go straight D because, yeah, Larry Markkinen, that's a lot of money for a dude who can't defend threes and you don't have anyone that can guard threes on your roster. You've got Jared Allen at 5 for 100, and it's like, I really like Jared Allen on a rookie deal. $25 million a year. No, sorry, $20 million a year is a lot. And it's like, if the ceiling is Rudy Gobert, it's like, okay, well, that already comes with its own issues because we see what the ceiling of Rudy Gobert is. But if he's anything less than that, then you're getting diminishing returns of that $20 million a year. And Larry Nance Jr., he was their best defender. And he can cover all the holes, all the issues on this team. And they fucking traded him away for a guy who doesn't fit anything but their timeline.
I didn't even say a word and I talked you down a full 2 grades.
I don't know what I was thinking when I gave him a C-. How silly of me. And I've actually gone below you.
It must have been the eyebrows that I was giving you. My very expressive eyebrows convinced you to drop your grade. This is a shit off-season. This is fucking terrible because...
what'd you give him? What'd you give him?
I gave him a D+. They drafted Mobley. Great. Big man of the future. Love it. Then they lock up a rigid rim-running 5. What happens if it turns out that Mobley is actually a 5?
Well, this is called not trusting your scouting department because they haven't been able to in the past couple of years. So what if Mobley's just bad because the Cavs drafted him? So all of a sudden you've got a starting center.
But the consensus is that he's not going to be bad. The consensus is that he actually might be fucking hectic and be, like an all-star level talent. But the 2 ways that it can go down the track is it turns out that he is a 5, which means that you're now benching Jarrett Allen to pay him $20 million and like $20 million for your backup center, fucking hello.
Dude, that's $50 million on the bench next to Kevin Love.
Yeah, well, we don't need to talk about him. He's something else. But then even if it works, then you're locked in with Mobley at the 4. Better hope that he develops in a way where he can stretch the floor and doesn't need to play inside, because otherwise, what's Jarrett Allen doing? And then they give Larry Markkinen $70 million. Who the fuck was going to give Larry Markkinen $25 million? Like, you could have got him for 2 years, 25, 100%, 100%. Just because Larry Markkinen thinks that he's worth $20 million a year and he's sat out there like rotten fruit on the vine, doesn't mean that you then have to give him something close to what his own valuation of himself was. I just think that is a really icky deal. And I get the point of view of like, send out Larry Nance, get younger, cash in on his asset. I believe they picked up a protected first round pick in the process. But bringing in Larry Markkinen and paying him, I'm trying to do the quick math in my head, paying him $16 million plus a year that's pretty icky, especially when he and Allen are not generalists, they're specialists, which means that for them to have a proper role, you need to have a very well defined and structured front court rotation, which, because we don't even know how the fuck Mobley is going to play, what his best position is, what his best role is, you can't offer Allen or Markkinen the structure that they would need to thrive, which means you're paying a lot of money for a best case scenario that's probably not going to happen. And Rick Rubio, he's a fantastic mentor for young guys. Like,
that doesn't pull you off a D+.
No, I mean, like, it pulls me up from an F, honestly. Like, Rick Rubio is a good addition here.
Yeah.
But I just want to ask you, is there going to be like some like lingering tension here with me being a Sexton man and you being a Garland man? If it kind of gets like, oh, maybe these guys can't play together and like Rick Rubio's on the roster, so he could be like the replacement for the other one. Like, what happens if we get like really deep into like Sexton trade talks and then, they're like, the Cavs reports are coming out from like the Cleveland plain dealer and it's like the Cavs prefer Garland to Sexton? Like, are we going to be okay? You and I?
Probably not. But let's just cross that bridge when we come to it, or just deal with it internally and just get extremely toxic and rude to one another until it just explodes in our faces.
Well, I'm just happy that I'm on the sex side of things rather than the land side of things. So
what, Team USA Garland is better than fucking give me my money, Colin Sexton. That's a fucking, but his name's Sex. Hey, so I'm glad you're happy.
Have some respect for Colin Young Bull. Did you know that he once scored 40 in college playing with only 3 guys on his team? I bet you didn't know that.
I did know that. You've actually told me in both audio and written form. It's just,
you've probably seen it on Bleacher Report Instagram as
well. just to correct you as well, because you said that trading away Larry Nance Jr., who might be the best role player in the whole entire league, you said that they got a first in return for that, but no, Chicago were the ones to get the first round pick.
I mean, fucking,
and they got a second round pick
out of here. Can we get Kobe out of here and also pump the brakes on this Larry Nance, who's the best role player of business? Like, come on.
I'm just saying that now before he goes and dies in Portland.
Yeah, before he gets cursed.
I mean, he had half a year. he had half a year of being the best role player on earth.
I just think that is like, a very myopic view, and I just think that that's not true. But anyway, potato.
I would sell the kidney to swap him for pneumonia Bielitsa.
Which kidney? Pretty good one.
The left one. So let's move on to the Minnesota Timberwolves, who, with their own 7th pick, drafted Jonathan Kamick. No, they didn't. Sorry, they actually traded that pick for D'Angelo Russell in exchange for salary dumping Andrew Wiggins to the Golden State Warriors.
That's so cheeky.
If this were a 4-man weave, there'd be laughing tracks for a minute. They re-signed. Actually, I need to update the sheet. They re-signed Jared Vanderbilt and Jordan McLaughlin both to 3-year deals. I'm not going to tell you how much it was because no one cares. They didn't sign anyone. They traded for Patrick Beverley and Taurean Prince, your mate. They lost Rick Rubio, Juan Hernan Gomez, and Jarrett Culver. They gave up on the Culver experiment. Who would have known? So did they also, Memphis got Carson Edwards. One went to Memphis. Memphis traded him to Charlotte for Chris Dunn and Carson Edwards. Is that right? No. Grant Williams. Who just Juan Hernan Gomez plays for Boston right now, yes?
I believe so. I
And
think
then-
you're on the money there.
All right, awesome. Well, if you Google it, just says Spanish basketball player. Yeah, plays for the Celtics. So the Minnesota Timberwolves, what can you do? Like, you've given them a C, which is so perfect. I've given them a C plus because for what they had at their disposal, which was a team so close to the tax despite being bad, no draft capital whatsoever, and they're able to re-sign two of their best players, Vanderbilt and Jordan McLaughlin, and
Oof.
and then adding Pat Bev is like I think that's a net neutral. Like if you just shut your eyes, open them, and you've just swapped Rick Rubio for Pat Bev.
And what about Torian Prince? So that's a net positive.
Sorry, that's what was he? He signed with Brooklyn. He's going to be like the finishing piece next to. How about that? You thought he was going to be the finisher next to KD, and Bruce Brown took his role. That's
not what I said. You're literally putting on your Bobby Porter's hat here, and you're just like grossly misquoting me. No, I did, however, many moons ago, which is approximately 18 months ago, I did say that I thought he was good and that I thought he was going to be very good and that he was worth being paid $14 million a year, which obviously is not true. So I'm very happy for you to hold that against me. But what I'm not happy for is for you to make things up and falsely attribute quotes to me saying that I said he was going to be the finisher.
All right. Let's move on from there. Did you want to say anything about the Minnesota Timberwolves, or did you want to say why you gave them a C, or did you want to retain our listenership?
No, chat about it a little bit. Yeah, you said it. What could they do? They couldn't do anything because of the gross mismanagement of years past. And the good thing about that is that they didn't do anything bad. The bad thing about it is that they were shit last year and they potentially won't be much better this year because a lot of that is depending on Karl Anthony Towns magically becoming a good defender, which, where's that been? Nowhere. And Anthony Edwards being really good. If those two things both happen, then this could be a good team. But if zero or even one of them don't happen, then they're in trouble. And bon voyage to Jarrett Culver. Adieu to the Jarrett Culver era in Minnesota. How sweet ye were.
I also did a Memphis Grizzlies my league. I actually traded for Ben Simmons in the latest NBA 2K, and Jarrett Culver didn't touch the court that whole entire season. So
I thought you were going to say he got traded to a team and popped off and developed into like an 84 overall, and then had like a 26 point per game season.
Well, you know how 2K works. There's no such thing as popping off. It's just like just steady growth and decline for every single player, and nothing comes out of the blue. I don't know how they end up deciding who wins most improved player like years into the future. Like, it's just an algorithm at that point. There is no young player coming up. I could probably just find out myself. Do you want to move on to the Toronto Raptors?
Yeah, so the Raptors brought in Scotty Barnes through the draft with the 4th pick. They brought back Gary Trent and Ken Birch on big deals, and then brought in Sam Dekker, Svi Mykhailiuk, and Isak Bonga, everyone's favorite Isak. And then in trading away Kyle Lowry, they brought back Goran Dragic and Precious Achiuwa from Miami, and then they've picked up in free agency Rodney Hood, Stanley Johnson, and DeAndre Bembry because obviously there's like an underwhelming wing thing going on there. They're like, what's the theme of the season? It's like underperforming wings who haven't lived up to their draft status. Let's get the 3 best guys. If that was the criteria, it's like, which underperforming wings can we bring in? Those 3 names, and then notwithstanding Dekker, Mykhailiuk, and Bonga, they've literally just brought in what's like the sixth version of a triumvirate, because they've just brought in a 6-umvirate of underperforming wings. So if that was the criteria, these cunts would be getting an A+. Regardless, I've given them a B.
Oh, really? So what like because I've given them a C. What makes them better than a C?
Well, I think I like the Barnes pick, and I'm not looking at it from a perspective of, like they just got I'm not giving them a boost because they they got lucky to be at the top of the lottery. Like this actually involved like, decision making because they had to choose like, are we moving up? Are we staying put? And then if we are staying put, are we going Suggs or Barnes? And the more that I've thought about it, obviously I was shocked as well as the rest of the NBA world that they didn't pick Suggs, that they picked Barnes. But like there's some fucking sick positionality going on with Anunoby, Siakam, and Barnes if Barnes turns out to be good. So those three could be really interesting together, and let alone being insurance for Siakam if they do decide to move him on. And I think that Achua and Dragic is a good hold for Lowry. Like Dragic probably has some like trade on value. He's on an expiring this year, so get halfway through the season and move him to a team that is desperate for scoring guard help. Achua is a very Toronto player. The only thing that I don't really like is like I just feel like Gary Trent, like a lot of money for someone who's like not that good defensively, and who like has he proven that he knows how to dribble a basketball? Because if he has, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so I've given them a C plus, and most of the offseason was a C. Where it's like you've drafted a 5-player draft. You drafted one of the right dudes. Gary Trent, you knew this was going to be the cost for Gary Trent as soon as you traded for him at mid-season. So be it. I'd rather have Gary Trent than Norman Powell, but that's not part of this offseason. Ken Birch, fine money. I mean, they got him for absolutely nothing, which came out of nowhere halfway through the year. And like, is a Canadian dude who wants to be there, so on and so forth. So that's fine, like backup center, whatever. Sam Decker, but yeah, it's a minimum. Isaac Bonga, he can just be the next Stanley Johnson. But the reason I've bumped them up from a C to a C plus is the fact that they just played the Kyle Lowry situation well, where obviously there was that whole ordeal halfway through the year where it's like, oh, Kyle Lowry just played his final game as a Toronto Raptor, and like he waved at the fans, and it's like, okay, he's going to be playing for the Lakers or Philly. And if he'd gone to either of those two teams, they would have traded him their pick, and their picks were like 26 and like 29. Like if you had just traded for that pick, you wouldn't be getting anything more. You'd just be getting matching salary in return and a very low first round pick. But by waiting until this offseason, you've been able to trade him for Goran Dragic. I don't think he has trade on value. I think he's got buyout value, and he's just going to go to a contender halfway through the year, or just stay with Toronto and then become a free agent. But Precious Achiuwa is a better asset than they would have gotten from anyone halfway through the season last year. And I think that's worthy of a buff up from a C to a C plus.
Yeah, I think that's in the ballpark. And if Barnes turns out to be this like, defensive whiz facilitating point forward straight away, and they're rolling out lineups that they have like, like Anunoby as a small ball 5 with Barnes and Siakam at the forward spots, like that's going to be, causing some early season carnage. And I think that there's some really exciting stuff potentially coming for Toronto. So I'm keen. I'm trying to temper my expectations when I'm doing this analysis, but I think that a B is a fair shot.
I think some people could say, hey, maybe this is the offseason where you have to trade Van Vliet, Siakam, and/or OG Anunoby. And this isn't the breaking point. Like, you don't have to move on from one or all of them there. Like, you're not just going full into the tank, even though Masai Ujiri came out last week and said that, yeah, they're going to be bad. And like the whole thing is rebuilding. You don't have to, but I think there's a tiny chance that we could look back on this and be like, oh, okay, well, now it's the offseason of 2022. Siakam had another bad year, and now he's 2 years removed from being that All-NBA guy. I think there's a tiny bit of disaster potential there, but you and I are both keen for this next season for him. And just if he ever gets traded, you and I are high on just where he's going to be next, because we think he can be that good. I just like to say that there is the opportunity that those three dudes could lose some value this coming season, and it might be a lost opportunity. Not going to dock him for it, though.
Yeah, it could be, but I think they've got the option here to say, like, do they fit well together? And if they all fit well together, then you can kind of say, all right, well, we're going to move Siakam or we're going to keep him before they've lost too much trade value. Because he's the one that will move. It won't be Anunoby, it'll be Siakam if anyone gets traded. So right. He's as soon as he gets traded, I've said this before, but I'm jumping on the bandwagon for him wherever he goes.
All right, let's move on to the Sacramento Kings, who drafted Davion Mitchell 9th. They re-signed Terrence Davis 2 for $8, Mo Harkless 2 for $8.9, and Rashawn Holmes at 4 for $46.5. They signed Alex Len at 2 for 7.6. They traded for Tristan Thompson. They lost Sam Whiteside in free agency, and they lost to Lon Wright in that Tristan Thompson trade. I've given them a C- just because, like, what are you going to do? You drafted the guy who seems like the right pick here. Terrence Davis, I actually like him, I think, more than just the general consensus. And I think that's a fine deal, a bit of upside there in the second year if he is as good as I think he is. Mo Harkless, he wants to be there for some reason. And you've just got a dude who can just play a bunch of roles on that team. It's just, and like the Rashawn Holmes deal, it's like, I thought he was going to get 60 million from Charlotte. I thought he was going to get 60 million from somewhere. And he's just got no leverage at all and just came back on a fine deal. Like, would you rather this or have like Kelly Olynyk or what's that German dude? Daniel Tice. Like this is beautiful for the Kings. But then traded for Tristan Thompson and didn't pick up the asset while taking on Tristan Thompson's deal and signed Alex Len. What the fuck are you doing? But anyway, C-. What have you done?
Yeah, I've gone C because there's only really two moves that carry any weight here, and it's bringing in Holmes and Mitchell. And you said it, Les said it in his beautiful Kings season preview, which is up now on the deep2.com. Can't believe it's that easy. Where he was like expressing a similar sentiment to what you did, that he thought that Holmes was going to get a much bigger deal. So to bring him back on what, like 12 million per is a fantastic piece of business. But he also did lambaste them for being like, yeah, like we need a reliable backup option, and then bringing in like Len and Thompson. So like, you've got two backup options, reliable, open to interpretation. And then the big one that everyone wants to get on board for is Davion Mitchell, who was the 9th pick and who just like defensively tore it up in summer league. But I just want to express not doubt, but just some caution, which obviously very in character. But let's pump the brakes on like talking about this, 6-foot guard with a 6'2" wingspan being like a difference maker. Like, let's just see, what it looks like when they go up against the Pacers and he's like defending Brogdon, and Brogdon's like 6'6", and he's like, anyway, like, you're just not going to get near me. Like I get the summer league highlights looked great, and there's the game against Charlotte where he's like harassing James Bouknight in the corner, but like, that's a dude who also is just playing in his first summer league. Like, let's see how good this guy is against like actual like NBA level competition and like NBA size.
I mean, he's NBA age. He's the same age as Jason Tatum today.
Well, I mean, there you go. So he's presumably like, not gonna grow anymore. Not trying to like short person hate here, but I'm just like, there's a realm in which he's not that good offensively, and his defensive impact is limited just from his size. So let's wait and see what happens. So that kind of gives me reason for doubt, but the Holmes deal is really good. So yeah, I've gone C, which I think is pretty fair.
Cool. All right, let's move on to one of the more interesting off seasons this whole entire off season, which is the Chicago Bulls, who drafted Ayo Dosunmu at 38. They re-signed Javonte Green at 35. And then the big stuff was signing and trading for Lonzo Ball at 4 for 80. They signed Tony Bradley 2 for 3.8, Alex Caruso 4 for 37, DeMar DeRozan at 3 for 82. Stanley Johnson minimum, Alizé Johnson at 2 years on the minimum. And they got Derrick Jones back in a trade where they let Larry Markkinen walk. They also let Daniel Tice walk and Garrett Temple. And they traded away their best defender in Thaddeus Young, traded away Tomas Satoransky and El Farouk Aminu. I cannot believe you have given them a C. I've given them a D+, just because I actually don't know why I've given them a D+. I should just give them a D. Yes, they're going to be better at basketball, but for what was available at this, maybe I should go to a D+, because they went down this track when they went down this track when they traded for Nikola Vucevic, which is like, hey, we're just going to like throw every hat in the ring when it comes to Zach LaVine, and we're going to be good now. And I say good with inverted commas, because it's like this team, like, where's the shooting coming from? Where's the spacing coming from? You've been saying all year Lonzo Ball's had one good year. Like, yes, maybe he'll be good, maybe he won't be bad from three, but like, that's a very small track record. DeMar DeRozan can't shoot. Yes, he's got longer hair now. Does that help anything? it's like, what are you? Who's stopping anyone, and who's spacing the floor for anyone? And like, even if you're like, oh, well, Vucevic shoots threes, it's like, yeah, he shoots above the break threes. He doesn't sit in the corner, and like his best position is standing at the high post with the ball, doing what he does best, which is just leverage some 8 seed. And it's like, it's terrible. I'm gonna watch this team just for like just the explosiveness of it. I just want to see this team fail and just like everything crash and burn. Like you and I were so high on Arturas Karnisovas, and I think that's simply just because they were Arturas Karnisovas.
Who?
Big Artie. Just simply because they were different to the previous regime, and he doesn't seem to be anything different to the previous regime. They just love mediocre basketball over there.
I think that's a fair criticism that he's not actually that different to the Garpax regime, because this is something that you could just easily see Garpax doing. I've given them a C because they're going to be better, and not every franchise operates on the continuum of what, like what we think they should, where it's like it's championship or bust, it's contention or bust. Like there is something to be said for teams that have been shit for a long time, which we're going on to 4 or 5 years since Jimmy Butler left, of them being a very bad franchise, wanting to just be like in the conversation, and you're in the conversation. You're ready to. Well, I mean, they might not be, because as much as I'm not a Lonzo Ball fan, like he's an okay player, and he'll be a good player. Like he'll be a definite net positive starting point guard worthy guy if the shot is real. Now, my thoughts on that. Like I'm gonna wait until I see it for an extended stretch. That's not just like 30 games. But Lonzo Ball is good. DeMar DeRozan is good. Alex Caruso is good. Derek Jones is good. Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, Vucevic. There's something there. That doesn't have to be the 7 seed. There's no reason that it has to be the 7 seed. You're going to need to kind of get creative with how you're going to use all these players, how you're going to figure out how to get the most out of DeRozan and Vucevic on the floor at the same time, how you're going to get the most out of Lonzo Ball. Like, is he just going to be like a transition runner and spot up shooter? Like, what are you going to do there? There's work to be done, but they're going to be better. And I think that the best case scenario is that they jump up into like the concrete playing playoff spots. Okay, so considering that that's what they wanted to do, they've done it. I would put it to you this way, and not like I'm saying this is the best offseason ever, because like I said, I've given it a C. In a vacuum, if the Miami Heat made these moves, I think the conversation would be, well, they've overpaid a lot, but in the past, they've shown that when they need to get out of it, they can get out of it. And they've got LaVine, they've got Vucevic, they've got like all-star level players. So if some of these contracts don't work, they'll be able to like move some things around and like get ready for another shot. That would be the conversation, I think. So I think that if you wanted to give the benefit of the doubt to the front office, then you could kind of put those glasses on and say, like, it's not the be all and end all if this doesn't work immediately. Like if they're just average or they're mediocre or they're not as good as they want to be, like it's not like this is the team for the next 5 years. Like there's a bit more flexibility maybe than has been made out.
Okay, well, if the idea is, and like, yes, I do think the idea is just be better and make the play something, right? So yes, if you don't look at any of the numbers and say this team didn't have these guys and now they have Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, Tony Bradley, who I think is good, Tony Bradley, and Alex Caruso, yes, they've gotten better. But then you look at the money, and DeMar DeRozan was interviewing with the Clippers, who only had the taxpayer mid-level exception to offer him, and that was his market.
Shit business, like the DeRozan deal.
Shit business, man.
It's financially indefensible. There's anyone who has a take that's different to that is, has no idea what's happening. DeMar DeRozan's a good player. He's a useful player. He's still very valuable. He's proven over we the last saw 4 years that he can change
in the last
and modify 6
his
months.
Game. In the last 6 months, he did some awesome things for San Antonio, playing the power forward position, right? And it's like, that's awesome because you don't need as much shooting there, and maybe you compare him to someone who does shoot like Vucevic, which is pretty cool. But then you've got him, you've also got Pat Williams, and then you've also got Derek Jones Jr. You've got all these dudes that their best positions the four. And like, yes, okay, maybe that's why you don't keep Thaddeus Young. And maybe that, I mean, you have to sign and trade him away somewhere, but maybe that's why you decide to take Derek Jones Jr. in this deal as opposed to taking back Larry Nance, who would be a good fit on this team. It's just like, that's such an overpay because he was going to sign for the mid-level, and then it's not even like they're meeting somewhere in the middle. He's getting paid $20 million more a year on this deal, which is just horrid. And like,
it's a shit deal, but he doesn't need to play the 4 to be valuable and effective because he has been playing the 2 and the 3 in San Antonio, and he's developed into one of the best wing facilitators. He's obviously, got that like ISO bag scoring that we've seen. That's the reason why he was genuinely like a deserving all-star for like 5 years in Toronto. He's a good player. And maybe you'd rather have Thagic, or maybe you'd rather have Larry Nance, and maybe you're saying like they've messed up the roster because they've got like Derek Jones and Patrick Williams who need to play as a 4 as well, and they can't use DeRozan at the 4. Maybe. I don't know. But he's a good player. He's on the roster. He's going to contribute. It's an overpay. It's a gross overpay. But just in terms of the basketball court, I think that, he's an intelligent player as well. And he's shown that he's adaptable. The one thing that he can't do is shoot. But with Vucevic playing the 5, you can still play 4 out with him on the court.
Yeah.
Especially if Levine is real and Lonzo's shot is real. There you go. That's your, you feel good about that.
If I'm going to Dr. Troy,
I feel like now I'm in the corner of being.
Oh, you've been in this corner before. I've talked you into the DeRozan corner before, man. Just look around, enjoy the scenery. But if I'm going to dock Detroit for signing Trey Lyles, and then I'm going to dock some other teams for making like bad moves that like are going to hurt them, I'm definitely docking a full grade here for the Chicago Bulls for overpaying the fuck out of DeMar DeRozan. This seems like something that was agreed to before free agency began. It's like, especially if the Bulls are getting investigated for the Lonzo Ball sign and trade right now. It's like, maybe while you're there, look at one of these other deals. This seems quite preordained.
Yeah, well, I mean, for all of our differences in opinion, we're still only half a grade apart. So, I think
you've given them a C. You haven't like awarded them a fucking Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, I just, I think they might be good, but I think on the face of it, like, it's a pretty C off season.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to another similar train of thought with the New Orleans Pelicans. And you talk about tampering for making your team better. David Griffin thought he would dump a whole bunch of salary just to sign Devontae Graham. So the New Orleans Pelicans signed Devontae Graham and Garrett Temple. They drafted Trey Murphy 17th. They re-signed Josh Hart at 338. Willie Hernangomez at 3 for 7.3, and Didi Lazuda at 4 for 7.7. I actually watched him play once for the Sydney Kings. They got Giannis Valanciunas and Thomas Satoransky back in a trade. They let James Johnson and Lonzo Ball walk while also trading away Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe. I wrote an article on this topic that you can check out on the deep2.com. Can't believe it's that easy. And I've given them an F+ here. I've given them the plus because, as I mentioned in our group chat the other day, I really like the idea of Devontae Graham as a guy who can shoot the shit out of the ball, but isn't the best passer. But you've got him on a team that doesn't need him to dribble the ball down every single time. Trey Murphy looked good in Summer League, grain of salt. They dumped salary and they gave up tangible assets to dump salaries to sign new salaries of Garrett Temple and Devontae Graham. You don't spend first round picks and like the jump from 7 to 17 to fucking sign Devontae Graham and Garrett Temple. Even though I like both those deals, you don't give up what they did to do that. What did you give them?
I've given them a D. So not falling quite as far as you did, but I share pretty much similar sentiments, except I don't think Devontae Graham is a good signing. Like, I don't think that it's a good pivot from not getting Kyle Lowry.
Or Chris Paul.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, the point guard was never going anywhere. I'm going to read you their guard depth chart. So it's Graham.
Can I put you on mute while you do that?
Honestly, I wouldn't blame you. Graham, Alexander Walker, Kira Lewis Jr., Trey Murphy, grain of salt, Thomas Satoransky, and Temple. Is that the worst guard lineup in the whole league? Because I think it probably is, just in terms of like role players that are they that good, unproven guys who have shown effectively not a lot. And that's maybe being generous because we still don't know what Lewis Jr. and Alexander Walker are as actual functional NBA players, and like no top level talent, none. There's not even like a guy on that roster who was starting last year, and you were like, yeah, like that's good that that person's starting. Like Devontae Graham was playing off the bench in Charlotte, and he was terrible off the bench. Satoransky was starting some games for Chicago, but not because they were like, yeah,
because
like
he's elite.
Sato's our guy. It was like he was just there. Like there's no one who any other team was like, yeah, we are happy to like roll into this. Yeah, I think that there's problems here, just in terms of what they actually brought in, and that's before you even assess like the opportunity cost of them basically going in and being like, we're getting Kyle Lowry, and then not getting Kyle Lowry, and you know, like having set up all of their roster moves to be like, yeah, we're bringing Kyle Lowry in. So outside of that complete fuck up, I think like just the quantifiable names on the team sheet now are not even particularly appetizing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do like the Josh Hart deal though, and the fact that he's like very small. We've got tiny guarantees in the last 2 years there.
Yeah, but we're giving out flowers for congratulations. You brought back Josh Hart. Like we would have given you a fucking F if you didn't bring back Josh Hart on a reasonable deal. Like it's not hard to bring Josh Hart back on a
especially when
deal.
he's restricted. Yeah,
you know, it's not. Yeah, like it is a good deal. I like Josh Hart, but yeah, I just think in totality, like they have fucked this up. And if any listeners are interested in Sean's comprehensive manifesto of why David Griffin should no longer be employed by the New Orleans Pelicans, head to thedeep2.com. I can't believe it's that simple. And read Sean's article from a few weeks ago, Fire David Griffin, because if you like just walking down memory lane of like how did we get here and let's relive some terrible GM decisions, that is the article for you.
He's a spoiled, entitled little prick who has just been handed a silver platter, and he's just somehow managed to not simply grab that platter and place it on his table. He's just like grabbed it with one finger and tipped it on the ground.
Yeah, he's like the underachieving hedge fund son who still like somehow manages to be a fuck up despite having tens of millions of dollars at his disposal.
Yeah, sounds a lot like a certain owner of a New York sports franchise. Let's move on to the Charlotte Hornets, who drafted the aforementioned James Bouknight and Kai Jones. That's 11th and 19th, respectively. They re-signed Terry Rozier at 4 for 97. They signed Kelly Oubre Jr. at 2 for 24.6. Ishmael Smith. Did you know that Ish Smith, his real name is actually Ishmael? They brought in Ish Smith.
Figured.
I never put those two dots together. Ishmael Smith at 2 for 9.2 and traded for Mason Plumlee and Wes Iwundu. They let Cody Zeller, Devontae Graham, and Malik Monk walk in free agency. I've given them a C minus. Simply for the fact that this is all fine. Like I think the Kelly Oubre deal is good, and you can just wash your hands of it a year from now. They drafted the right dudes at the position. Terry Rozier deal's fine. I just really thought they were going to try and get into like the Rashawn Holmes stakes, or maybe trade for one of the Indiana centers, or just get like an exciting center. And their answer at center is Mason Plumlee. And it's like, come on, man, you've got LaMelo Ball, and I know that they're like really bought into this team, and it's like there's not much upside here, but you like Montrezl Harrell as well. He would have been a beautiful fit here, even just trading for him. Like we saw that Washington got him simply as matching salary, and you could probably even still call Washington and try and get Montrezl Harrell off them. But yeah, it's just I like it all. It's all fine. It's all a C until Mason Plumlee was the answer at the C. Beautiful wordsmith. What did you do, Dante?
That was beautiful. That's Shakespearean. See, I've gone B plus. I've gone completely the other way because I think they've actually big brained it here. I think the Charlotte Hornets, Mitch Kupchak, James Borrego, they've got together and they have big brained the fuck out of it because they lose Malik Monk off of a career year. It's like, well, you know, are we gonna pay up for one good season of Malik Monk when we've seen 3 bad seasons of Malik Monk? No, we'll let him walk. We'll replace him with James Bouknight. Okay, you hope he's picked at the same pick that Monk was. You hope that he's better. You hope that he actually sticks. Kai Jones, they might say, is the answer at center, like to be like a backup / reliable option. Opinions were split on him going into the draft. But here's where I think the mental energy is just unparalleled. They've brought in Oubre Jr., 2 years, 25. So he's sitting at about $12 million of average annual value. What is that? What is a replacement level like? Not replacement level, like a serviceable starting / like sixth man level big, MLE level big cost. It's about the size of Kelly Oubre's contract. So you bring him in. You bring you bring Kelly Oubre in as literally just a flyer. You say, all right, if you can capture the Suns form from 2 years ago, like you've definitely got a spot on this team because some Lonzo
wings are valuable.
Yeah, wings are valuable, and Kelly Oubre has some potential to come from Miles Bridges' throne as the recipient of the Bleacher Report Instagram Lonzo Lamelo oops. But if he's not good, it's literally just built-in center money. You just trade him. You trade him for whichever center comes around. The centers the centers that we talked about today, it's Tice. Like I don't think that deal would get done for Holmes. But if Holmes had like an underwhelming season, that's what Kelly Olynyk's deal is. That's what all of these like. If you squint, it's a starting center deals are, and a lot of those guys are substantially better than Mason Plumlee. So I think if it comes through that Oubre is not actually performing the way that they wanted, and Plumlee proves to not be the answer, which there's reason to think that both of those things will happen. They've got that salary and they don't have to sacrifice any functional part of their team because Oubre is just like a nice, add-on. I think that there's flexibility there.
Yeah, but everything else is just average. That's why I've given it a C.
Well,
I don't mean C in a negative. I mean C as a pass grade.
Yeah, the one thing that like I really like this because I think that there's just it's very NFL the way that they've done this, where they're like, okay, like Malik Monk comes to the end of his rookie contract, let's just replace him with someone on another rookie contract. It's like we'll just cycle it in. We'll get at minimum. We'll get the same production from Book Knight that we get from Monk over the course of this deal. You bring in Kai Jones, you say, we've got a problem at center. Let's bring in like a potentially high upside center and just like see if we can make something out of it. The one thing that I really don't like is 4 for 97 for Terry Rozier. Like,
I think it's fine.
It's just a lot of money. It's just a lot of money for someone who had a great year last year. Really good year, but how many years has he been like really good? What if that's an aberration year? And then if he's even Terry Rozier from 2 years ago, it's like, well, that's a $16 million player, not a $25 million player. And you can get away with a couple million overpay, but you can't really get away with like a 40% overpay on what your starting point guard's worth. So
yeah, but not many people go to Charlotte and just cash out and then like aren't good anymore.
No, not even some particularly pudgy Frenchmen.
True. No, you're no.
We're making a Gordon Hayward reference.
Oh, sorry, no, not Al Horford. No, I wasn't making a Gordon. Well, soon, but
I thought you were making a Batum reference.
There was Batum, and then there's Big Al Jefferson.
Yeah, Big Al. Yeah, rest in peace. He wasn't. To be fair, he was an all-star in Charlotte for 1 year, and then it was
such a weird year.
Actually, the games kind of passed you by over the space of the off-season.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to the next team, which is the Spurs. Do you want to give their particulars?
I was hoping that you would give it because I'm just desperate to hear you talk about Josh Primo, but I will take the lead on this one. So they brought in Josh Primo through the draft at number 12. Josh Primo is the guy who Sam Vecini said was the worst pick in the first round. So more on that in a second. Through free agency, they brought in Zach Collins on a 3-year, $22 million deal, although that's not all guaranteed. They brought back Bryn Forbes. They brought in Jock Landale, another Australian. Sean, I'm on the Jock Landale train as well.
I am. Did he go to St. Kevin's?
Well, more on that in a minute. Doug McDermott on an eye-watering 3-year, $42 million deal. And then they brought in Thagic from the Bulls and Al-Farouq Aminu as well, whilst losing DeMar DeRozan, Rudy Gay, Patty Mills, Trey Lyles, and Gorgie Jeng. So we've obviously got to touch on Landale. We've obviously got to touch on what you have to say on Primo. I'm going to kick it off and say that I'm going to give these guys a C+, but then I'm giving the floor to you and go.
Cool. Jock Landale went to Geelong Grammar School. Means nothing to us here in Melbourne.
Well, I mean, arguably as bad.
I would
from a sandstone, like a sandstone perspective, like Sandstone Educational Institute. Geelong Grammar is quite sandstone educational. So
fucking whatever. So I've given them a B+. All right. And I feel like you thought I was going to give them a much worse grade. They might have overdrafted a guy who went 25 picks too early. Yes, they lose points there.
Sell him.
That is the one detriment on this offseason. Because at the end of the day, you're the Spurs. All you need are 24 wins for Greg Popovich to get the record as the most wins of any coach in the NBA ever. All right. So it's all just about like, you're going to be bad, but you need to be 24 wins bad. And last season, they were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the whole entire league. They brought back Bryn Forbes and they brought in Doug McDermott, which is a lot of money, but you also got to remember this is a bad team. You're just giving away money for free, right? You don't like that, but I think just having a shooter in the building, a shooter on a tradable contract, that's fine. But the real win here is the fact that they were able to get Chicago's 2025 pick in exchange for Thaddeus Young and Al-Farouq Aminu, who Thaddeus Young is not bad salary. Thaddeus Young is one of the better defensive forwards in the league as a role player. And you've just brought him in while also grabbing on, like obviously you got paid to take on the Al-Farouq Aminu deal just for letting DeMar DeRozan walk, who you were happy to let walk for absolutely nothing. But all of a sudden you're just walking along saying, all right, see you, DeMar. And someone's like, oh, you were saying goodbye to that dude. Do you want like $100 just for letting that dude go? It's like, oh, not really. I was just like, I was going home anyway. Like we finished like hanging out. And he goes, no. Like, actually, here's $100 and an extra $200 because not only do you get the pick to take on Thaddeus Young right now, and Al-Farouq Aminu, you're a bad team, dead money means nothing. But you get Thaddeus Young, who halfway through the season is going to get traded for a first round pick anyway, because he was getting offered for first round picks, but Chicago wanted to make the play in this most recent season. So they said, no, we're not trading Thaddeus Young away because we want to win. They didn't win, and now they've traded him away anyway, traded him for negative value. So I think the Spurs pretty much got 2 picks here for nothing. Like, this is literally money for nothing. Yes, you take on Al-Farouq Aminu like $10 million, but you're getting a pick for Thaddeus Young and you're going to trade him again. Zach Collins, awesome buy low. It's like extremely non-guaranteed. The first year is like $10 million. No, 7 million guaranteed, and then it's like 4 and 3. So like, if he is just extremely injured, which probably will be, you're only going to be copying like $3 and $4 million for the next 2 seasons. So yeah, I've given them a B+ because from where they were, a team that wasn't going to get an elite talent at 12, for a team that wasn't going to bring in any elite talent or bring in any future prospects. You've already got like Lonnie Walker the fourth. You've already got Keldon Johnson. You've got these dudes who might pop, probably won't, might pop. You've just added spacing around them and you've added assets. And from where they were, they are better primed for the future than they were entering this offseason.
Okay, well, I've given them a C+. I think it's very interesting that for them, you're judging them by the like the standard of like, did they get like appreciably worse? Yes. Well, that's great. They've done exactly what they need to do, as long as they didn't get worse than 24 wins. I think that's an interesting way to.
That's
judge.
all that matters next season. That's all that matters next season.
Yeah, but I wonder if they think that.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they 100% do.
Well,
I've just been speaking. Pop.
You just got off with RC Buford and Pop.
Yeah. We call him Rick. Ricky C.
Ricky C. All right.
What's his name?
It's remote control.
Holy shit! Do not Google him. He's actually a rare form of penis gang. Oh, that's Fournier. His name is Robert Canterbury Buford. Anyway, as you were.
Josh Primo at number 12, whatever, we'll figure it out. We'll see. Zach Collins is a good buy low. Bring back Bryn Forbes, where he's had success as a ready-made Patty Mills replacement. Bring in Aussie legend fair income, true blue Aussie legend, Jock Landale. The thing that really gets me is I just hate the McDermott deal. I just think Doug McDermott's not very good. And I think that, 3 years, paying him $14 million a year.
But they're the Spurs. They have to sign a white shooter every offseason. It's in the rules.
Whoa, what's he shooting? White shooter. Jeez, that is
in the south of America. Yeah, that's pretty fucking red hot.
NSFW. I think I don't have too much to say. I think it's fine. I think they're taking a risk in the draft on Primo that, if it pans out, great. If it doesn't, whatever. But yeah, this doesn't really move me. Nice that they got Thajic. They'll flip him for another pick, like 100%. It's good business, but I'm not like doing backflips over here because it's not going to be a particularly good team. So
for nothing, man. Like DeMar DeRozan was gone, and then they got a first-round pick and Thaddeus.
It's good business.
It's great business. That might be the best deal of the whole entire offseason. Like, who got better from where they were in terms of DeMar's gone and you're getting a first-round pick and Thaddeus?
It's good. It's good business. Good business.
B+, you've given them the C+. Now, the Washington Wizards, they drafted Isaiah Todd 31st. They re-signed Raul Neto on the minimum. They signed Spencer Dinwiddie at 3 for 54. The Wizards won a fucking huge free agent sweepstake. They ended up, I'm not going to read all of it, but they traded away Russell Westbrook, got KCP, Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Kuzma, Aaron Holiday. There you go. I read all of it. They lost Robin Lopez, Alex Len, Isaac Bonga, and of course Russell Westbrook. You've given them an A. I've given them an A. This is awesome. You know how I said Thaddeus Young might be the best deal in the whole entire league. That's the second best deal because this fucking Westbrook trade is unbelievable. I don't know how they got what they did.
Yeah, I mean it's completely unbelievable that they managed to not only get off Westbrook, but that they got off him without taking on any onerous contracts. And the best part about it in bringing in KCP, Harrell, and Kuzma is that at some point there's going to be a team that comes knocking on one of those dudes. And when they do, exactly, well, all of them. And if you're not in the playoff hunt, if Bradley Beal leaves, teams are going to come knocking, and you have the ability to say, yeah, we'll take a first-round pick for each of them. So then you will have parlayed Russell Westbrook. Not only will you have gotten assets back, but then turn those assets into first-round picks if you decide to rebuild. If you don't, and you're gunning for it with Bradley Beal, although I have expressed my skepticism about that in the past, if you do that again, we've just seen these three dudes play in the postseason. Kuzma and KCP have played well in the postseason. Harrell, whatever, but he's the quintessential regular season guy. It's insane how well they've done here. And then they've taken less than half of the money, literally less than half the money that they cleared up with getting rid of Westbrook, and spent it on Dinwiddie on another non-guaranteed, the third year's only partially guaranteed deal, so that even if he's injured again or he's sneaky not that good, it's not disastrous. And the upside of Dinwiddie is, that a lot of people around the league are very, very high on him as a good caliber starting point guard. So just incredible gymnastics to get to untangle the knot. I'm just imagining Tommy Shepard, the GM, doing that cherry knot thing with the cherry stem in his mouth to get rid of Russell Westbrook, and he's come out with the thing's been tied, and everyone's like, how the fuck did you tie that cherry stem with your tongue? And he just says in his southern twang, he's like, well, I have my ways. That's Tommy Shepard.
Low key, one of the most attractive things a person can do the cherry tie thing.
Yeah, I see where we're at with you. I see where we're at.
So yeah, and I think the best part about this whole entire offseason is that Bradley Beal's happy with Russell Westbrook gone. He said he was happy with the trade and he likes the direction of the franchise. That's what they want. That's what we maybe want. You don't. I maybe do. They want to win with Bradley Beal, and they've made Bradley Beal happy because that's all that matters right now. The only reason I haven't given them an A+ is because they didn't re-sign Robin Lopez.
Robin Lopez, my guy. He's gone to the center sadness factory in Orlando.
Oh, yeah, gross. It's right. Maybe we can compete for minutes, Smith. Sorry, I was just thinking about this.
All right, let's move on to Indy.
So the Indiana Pacers drafted Chris Duarte, Isaiah Jackson, and they re-signed TJ McConnell and signed Torrey Craig. Yeah, nice. Is that the semantics? What's how do you say pronunciation shit in fancy words?
What?
Sorry. They lost Doug McDermott and Aaron Holiday. And possibly the best thing of all is we haven't actually been mentioning coaches with this. Like we just didn't mention a coach at Washington, but they replaced Nate Bjorkgren with Rick Carlisle. You've given them a C plus. I've given them a C plus. Man, we should do a podcast together. Treading water, but getting slightly better. And the best thing about the Indiana Pacers is that they're going to be healthy next year. So like if they had done absolutely nothing, they're at least going to be healthy and better next year. But they've done small things to make them a little bit better.
Yeah, you're just waiting for LeVert and Warren to be back on the court and then figure it out from there. Duarte is that dude who everyone's like, yeah, he's just going to be like a good role player from the word go. He is 32 years old, so like diminishing returns on the pick.
He's got 4 kids and he was at the draft. I don't know about that. So he's got 5 kids. Actually, he just had another one. Have you got him on Twitter?
No, I don't.
All fibs.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Pumping them out like rabbits. Isaiah Jackson is another like, high upside. Get him in the system and see what happens. Bring Matt McConnell, that's good. Bring in Craig, that's good. We love that. The Craig Gert that I've got in the run sheet is just because I'm officially railing against the American pronunciation Craig, and I'm gonna go so far as to build it into the spelling of the word so that it's absolutely clear that there will be no Craigs on this podcast whilst I'm here. I think this is a good move. I think this is a good off season. You can't really give them any credit for just like waiting.
There's nothing else they could have done.
Yeah, you just want to see LeVert and TJ Warren pull the jersey on, pull on the pinstripes, and then go from there. So in terms of what they've actually done, it's a reasonably modest haul, but they've done well. So I think C plus is where it's at.
And got the best coach out there.
Yeah, I low-key love like Rick Carlisle doing some fun stuff with this team offensively, like LeVert, Brogdon, Sabonis. Like I really like that trio under Carlisle.
Maybe you can turn into the next Porzingis.
Yeah, maybe. Is that a good thing?
I don't know. Do you want to move on to the Boston Celtics and tell us what they did?
Yeah, so the Boston Celtics brought in Marcus Smart on a 4-year, $77 million deal. They re-signed Marcus Smart. They re-signed Robert Williams, Time Lord, to 4 years, 54. And then in free agency, they brought in everybody's favorite German, Dennis Schroeder, and everybody's favorite exiled Turk, Enes Kanter. And then via trade, they brought in outcasts Al Horford and Josh Richardson, and then Juancho Hernan-Gomez and Bruno Fernando, whilst bidding goodbye to Kemba Walker, Evan Fournier, don't Google his name, Semi Ojeleye, Taco Fall, Tristan Thompson, and Carson Edwards. So like a lot of roster churn here, which might not be a bad thing because they were pretty shit last year. So I've given them a B plus.
Yeah, they did good things and they signed good value. Like I know we're talking in the group chat about Marcus Smart, and I think it's a good deal, and I think at the very least it's tradable. Robert Williams upside is like the second tier of centers, so just behind like Jokic and Embiid, and maybe like around that Capella range, right? And so 454 is great value for that Capella range, and like Jared Allen. I'd much rather have Robert Williams on his contract than Jared Allen on his contract, even though Jared Allen's probably better. Dennis Schroeder, like obviously has been talked about heaps, and now he's making jokes about how fucking stupid of a decision he made. But for the Boston Celtics point of view, that's a good deal. Enes Kanter at the minimum, whatever. Getting Al Horford, that's good. Getting Al Horford, pretty much nothing. Josh Richardson, and then re-signing Josh Richardson to like tack another $12 million on top of his deal. It's like no rush, but I mean, hey, you did it. And then Juan Hernan-Gomez, like you're going to be salary dumping some dudes. You're going to have to get some salary back in return. And it's just, C plus. It's just like a lot of turnover. I am ready to give this higher than C plus, but I sort of want to wait and see how it happens. We should also mention that they changed coaches from Brad Stevens, who is now the GM, and brought in, what was his name? Ime, yeah. So look, I'm very ready to be wrong on my C plus grade, but I do admit it could be wrong either way. I think this could crash and fail and be like, a lot of change, a lot of shit. Oh, these contracts don't look great, but I'm leaning more towards your grade, which is B plus. I think you could definitely get up there.
Yeah, so I think the Smart deal is an overpay, but like my initial reaction was like, how much? But now I'm like, okay, it's a bit of an overpay, but maybe when you factor in his unquantifiable, intangible things that he brings to the team, maybe that bumps the number up a little bit. And yeah, you said it, the Time Lord deal at 4 years, 54 million that's a fucking steal, especially because presumably he's like the guy now, like the number one guy, and Al Horford's going to play some 4 and then back him up. So we could be seeing a big season from Time Lord. I think it's a good deal. The Schroeder deal, obviously, they were just opportunistic, but like Schroeder's going to be better for them potentially than Kemba Walker was last year. So actually getting some decent like backup point guard play from him will be good. He can play in lineups next to Smart. He can play in lineups without Smart and like anchor the second unit if need be. And then bringing in Horford, like not a huge fan. Richardson has just been on a terrible odyssey since he was last good, just wandering around the league like hopelessly. But maybe it can be different here. And then the other guys they brought in, obviously, it's just filler. But I think that on the whole, I was expecting this team to have to be forced to take a step back, even from where they were last year, and just be like, look, we need like a soft reset so that we can retool and go in a different direction around our 2-star wings. And I feel like they've kind of like done the soft reset, but without stepping back, because I think they'll actually end up being better than they were last year, which is not really the direction that I expected them to go, because it kind of looked like they had a lot of money and a lot of stuff they needed to shed before they could be good again. So I'm impressed, and I think that, weighing it up where they are now versus like where they could have been if they had gone that other direction, I think that they've come out with some pretty reasonable deals for some pretty good players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like they didn't give up a huge amount of assets to get off Tristan Thompson, to get off Kemba Walker, even though they were taking back the money in Al Horford. It's just fun. It's nice.
I think they look at Al Horford as an asset. Like they don't even look at him and they're like, we're taking him back. They're like, we got Al back. Like he never should have left.
Yeah, it means more to Boston than it does to other teams.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's move on to the 30th team in this offseason recap, and that is the Memphis Grizzlies, who drafted, I think they did, yeah, Santiago Aldama, 30th. They drafted Zion Williams at 10th. They re-signed nobody. They signed Killian Tilly to a 2-way deal. That just tells you how many people they signed, because of the fact I had to mention the only person was a 2-way. They traded for Steven Adams, Jarrett Culver, Chris Dunn, Carson Edwards, Sam Merrill, and Daniel Oturu. They let Justice Winslow walk, and they traded away Giannis Valanciunas and Grayson Allen. For all the reasons I'm giving crap to New Orleans, I'm giving plenty of praise to the Memphis Grizzlies for being able to capitalize on the stupidity of another team. And I like the fact that Memphis saw where they were, that they have been in this playoff mix, and they've been in the playoffs. Actually, sorry, they weren't in the bubble, but they've been in the playoff mix for 2 years now with Ja Morant. But I like that they're recognizing that Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. aren't enough to take you past 45 wins in the NBA. So instead of saying, okay, let's just keep the game together, keep Giannis Valanciunas, just keep moving forwards, last season they had a look at Justice Winslow, didn't work out, let him walk, didn't just get trapped in like paying him too much money, and then obviously made this trade to take on salary to make yourself worse. I mean, I think the drop off from Steven Adams to Giannis Valanciunas isn't as big as it's being advertised, but it's still a drop off. Make yourself worse, take on a bunch of money to get Zion Williams to move up 7 spots to try and get a guy who can be part of the next great Memphis Grizzlies team, which is like, I think that's great. There's no other way that they would be able to try and get a dude of Zion Williams caliber. And they've done that by using the one asset they still have remaining, which is cap space. And congratulations to them for trying to get better in the future. I've given them an A.
See, I just fundamentally disagree with that last point, the Zion Williams point. I've given them a B, but the way that trade was covered, the Adams trade with New Orleans was the way it's been covered from the get-go was exactly the way that you covered it then, which was that they moved up from 17 to 10 to get to get a stab at a guy who could be like a star level guy, like a real big contributor for this team. And I just think it's a case of like selective application of the rule, because there's 10 other teams that if they were like, oh, they came out with the 10th pick, the exact opposite logic would be applied, and they'd be saying, well, they got the 10th pick in a 5-player draft. Like, how much good is that going to do? Star player at 10 in this draft? You're kidding. But Memphis did it, and for some reason they're like, oh, like they really nailed this with like getting up and getting someone with star potential, like Zaire Williams. Like, we'll see. But the 10th pick is not in and of itself saying that's like we should laud them for moving up 7 spots from 17 to 10. There's probably not much appreciable difference in the career of the average 10th pick versus the average 17th pick. So I just want to pump the brakes a little bit on, like, you know, saying.
But for every like 3-player draft, there'll be a Donovan Mitchell, or there'll be a Devin Booker, or there'll be.
But those guys got picked, you know, like 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. Like, it's all over the map. It's not like it's, you know, better at.
Yeah, and not that it's better at 10, but it's more likely to be 10 than it is 17.
But only slightly.
I think it's quite big. I think
I just think that I don't think that there's actually not to say that the pick that it's not valuable, but just like it's not like if Cleveland had the 10th pick, we'd be like, oh, these poor idiots, they're never going to get a good player. And then like now Memphis has got it, and they're like, wow, these guys, like, they're really like forward thinking. They turn cap space into a pick to try and get a better player. Like, wow, that's really good. I just think it's inconsistent application by most of the media, and not coming at you too hard, but I think by you as well.
Yeah. Zaire Williams didn't look good in summer league, and he didn't just pop off and average 30 points like Donovan Mitchell or something. But I think for like if Cleveland did it, it's like, oh, Cleveland's just moved up and Cleveland are already bad, and like obviously they got Evan Mobley. But if you're looking at Cleveland as like, oh, this 10th pick better be the savior, or this 10th pick better be our third dude next to Sexland, is different. Whereas a team with Memphis, where they have this clear avenue where they could just keep being good and keep being the 8th seed forever, and there is little to no way that they will ever get this close to the top of a draft. Like, I don't, unless they're trading Jaren Jackson Jr. or Ja Morant, how are they ever going to get, like, let's say they just brought JB back and they just brought the whole band back. How are they ever going to get this high of a stab at getting a star? And like, if you think the drop off from 10 to 17 isn't that bad, then they should have just stayed where they were and like hoped to like roll the dice on 17.
But that's not what I think. That's not what I think, though. I don't think it's not like a big jump. I just think that it doesn't like appreciably improve the chances of you getting a star, getting someone who's going to be like in your core.
Like, just Donovan Mitchell. Say like Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, well, Donovan Mitchell, because the way that's been covered isn't like, wow, like now they've got the chance to get a better role player. It's like they're giving themselves a better chance to get near the top of the draft and bring in like an elite level talent. And I'm just like, well, the elite level talents are gone at 10 in every draft. Like
but not every draft, because there's always a random one.
No, but I mean, like what we're saying now, like, yeah, like there's random ones that it's not clear until 3 years later or 2 years later that it was. But I'm just saying, like, the random one is only slightly more likely to be random at 10 than it is at like 17. And that's
it, man.
No, but but I mean, it's not the way that, like, I don't disagree with the logic. I'm not saying you shouldn't trade from 17 to 10. I'm just saying the way that it's been covered is like praise is being like lauded onto them, when if another team did the same thing, or if another team was just picking in the same bracket, they'd be like, wow, that's terrible. You can't get anyone good at 10. Just the inconsistency of it. And yeah, like pumping the brakes on the guy that's picked at 10 being like anything better than like a regular role player.
Yeah. I mean, at least they took Zaire Williams. Like, if they're taking Chris Duarte, it's like, oh, you've just given up assets to get a dude who looks like he's going to be a role player. Zaire Williams, I mean, I just Googled it. That's how little I know about him, but he's 20 years old, where it's like, okay, we'll see what happens. He's very skinny.
Just for like argument's sake, here's some names who have been picked 10 in the last 10 years. Cam Reddish, Mikal Bridges, Zach Collins, Thon McCour, Justice Winslow, Elf Payton, CJ McCollum, Austin Rivers, Jimmy Fredette, and Paul George. So there's probably 3 dudes in there, being Bridges, McCollum, and George, who are like difference maker and above. And the rest of those guys, you can't tell me that they're appreciably better than anyone who you could have got at 17 in the same draft. You know, just at 17 in any random draft. So I just want to push back on the logic of like, let's pat them on the back because they're doing their best to get a star. It's like, well, they're not going to get a star at 10, most likely.
But so let's say the chance of getting Paul George is 1%, right? But the chance of drafting Paul George at 17 is 0.5%. Like, is that like roughly right?
No, I know, but then it just comes back to the way that it's been covered because teams do stuff that increases their chance of getting a star by 0.5% literally all the time. And the media don't wet themselves over it and be like, wow, these guys took a deliberate step backwards to get better, like in the future. Like everyone does that. But for some reason, Memphis is... Yes, everyone does it all the time.
Like Charlotte just hooked up an IV drip of playing basketball, and they're going to sit on that for 5 years.
No, well, like maybe you want to compare it to like the most extreme examples of like small market treadmill of mediocrity teams going crazy. Like it looks heaps better, but it's like teams do those incremental, like, you know, putting a different protection on a pick. That means that you go from top 14 to top 10, and it's like it gives you a 2.5% chance of getting a better pick. And it's like, well, if that 2.5% chance means we pick Paul George in the specific draft that Paul George is available that low, then like sick. But it's not, you know, like. Yeah. I guess that doesn't really factor into me for when I'm giving out a grade. I'm not like, wow, they had such a great offseason. They marginally improved their chance of getting a decent player, you know, or a better player. I don't know. I hope that made sense in the way that I'm not criticizing the move to move up necessarily. I'm just criticizing the logic that's saying like we're moving up to get a star, or we're moving up to get a better chance at getting a star, because especially in a draft like this, but in general as well, like once you get past like 7, 8, it is actually just a crapshoot. And the only reason why you have more chance of getting someone realistically at 10 than 17 is because you've got more people to pick from. It's not because any one team has a year to year has a much better understanding of like who's going to be good in the long term, because obviously that has proven to not be true from the amount of shit players that get picked in the 10 to 20 range by every team. It's just literally that your numbers are slightly better because you've got 7 extra possible guys to choose from.
But what if Zion Williams was the guy and they had him? Like,
if Zion Williams is the guy and they masterminded it to get up to 10 because they knew exactly where he was going to be, and Zion Williams turns out to be a good player, then it's an A+. It's a hats off to them, and it's an absolute mastermind of GMing. But that's a lot of ifs.
But what if they move from PJ Hairston to Cam Johnson? Like, would you reward them for moving up from like 17 bad to 10 good Cam Johnson?
Yeah, but I'm not talking. Yeah, I mean, like, yes, I would retrospectively, but I'm not having a retrospective discussion here. I'm not talking about the player that specifically got selected.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the types of players that get selected, and that there's not a star generally available at 10, more so than there is at 17.
Yeah, but there is more so a star at 10 than 17.
Yeah, well, we're going around so I just like it's negligible. The degree to which there is like macro level negligible and not worthy of all of the like, you know, fucking the athletic think pieces that are like, wow, this is how small markets should really behave.
Yeah. This is how small markets should really behave.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe you can go around for the athletic.
Dude, we can only hope. Well, that's the final team. So sorry to leave a sour taste in everyone's mouth.
No, what the hell? That was a good discussion.
That was a good discussion.
I love when we bump heads. I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, yes. This is just a preview of what's to come with our Garland and Sexton discussions midway through the season.
Yeah, the breakup. There'll be an SB Nation video of the breakup of Deep 2.
They were best friends until one day they weren't.
Let's talk about... No, actually, that's a different thing. Yeah, well, I probably should have taken a few stats before we finished to be like, oh, who's more optimistic? Who's the happier person? Who's more negative? But I don't. And I don't know that. But
What's your gut feel? Who was the more optimistic person about all these going on?
You were more optimistic at the bottom, saying, "Oh, they got Jalen Green, their future's brighter." And I'm very much like, you drafted the right guy, you get a pass grade, you get a C. But a lot of like the young teams didn't. A lot of the bad teams weren't like, "Okay, we're bad. Let's take on $50 million and get this chance at Kevin Porter Jr." Like, no one made those trades where at the bottom of the draft, at the bottom of the league, they were like, let's draft our player and pick up Hamidou Diallo. Everyone was just like, let's draft our player, sign Kelly Olynyk, and sit still, and like no rushing whatsoever. There was no one like, there's no Boston that's like, oh, you've just traded away like Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and you've got all these players, and you've just drafted Jared Sullinger, and like you've just set yourself up for the next 5 years because Jared Sullinger is a starting center in the NBA. There was no like overly good at the bottom. So I guess in the bottom you would be more positive, but at the top I was much more positive. Like given Utah an A+, just because a lot of the teams at the top are already capped out, and I think a lot of the good teams got better by just like taking a chance at a Rudy Gay type, whereas you were just like, there's problems bigger than Rudy Gay. There's problems with the system. And I'm like, you're not going to change. You're not going to build Rome overnight when it comes to fixing the Utah Jazz.
You don't need to build Rome. You just need to give it a substantial reno. And I don't know what
too many squares. Oh.
I don't know what the Proverbs have to say about renovating Rome and the time frame that it takes to continue that. Well, I think that's a fair assessment of our levels of optimism and pessimism for all 30 teams. It's a pretty good effort by us getting through all 30 teams and it not taking 4 hours. So
it might have. Well, the first episode was like an hour 30, and then
this would be about an hour 30, I reckon.
We started podding at 4:20.
No, but we
yapped.
We yapped. Yeah, we had a little catch up. We had a little catch up at the start of the pod. So I think we'll come in right about an hour and a half. Listeners, you can look at your listening device right now and see how close. I'm going to say we're at like
no one's still listening to this.
I'm going to say we're at 93 minutes. So anyway, give me a yell if I got it right at 93 minutes right now.
All right. So just before we wrap up, obviously on the deep2.com, I can't believe it's that simple. I just typed it in my browser and the deep2.com came up. Read an article by friend of the pod, Alessio Conte, talking about the Sacramento Kings, aptly titled "Here We Go Again," looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly from the Kings offseason. And I would highly recommend everyone check it out because we've been positive on the Kings before, and this isn't all positive, but it's not all negative. So it's good to enter a season, not fingers crossed, hoping the Kings make the playoffs.
Balanced Kings content is what we need rather than a reprisal of the 2019 offseason where long-time listeners will remember that we were stupidly high on the Kings. What optimistic fools we were. I'm so much more cynical about life because of that experience now.
And yeah, that's all that's happening in our world. So make sure to follow us on all the socials. And Dante, is there anything you wanted to say before we wrap up?
No, couldn't have said it better myself, Sean. Thanks for listening.